think that man will be president of the United States right about the time that spaceships come down filled with dinosaurs and red kings.
Tom Hanks' quote uses absurdist imagery to critique Donald Trump's improbable 2016 election and the cultural political climate that enabled it. Each metaphor targets facets of Trumpism. Spaceships symbolize the alien disruption of norms, likening Trump's reality TV candidacy to an otherworldly invasion of traditional politics. Dinosaurs represent regressive ideologies, climate denial, xenophobia, and nostalgic rhetoric, make America great again. Framing Trump's agenda as antiquated and dangerously out of step with modernity, red capes directly mock MAGA performative populism, reducing its red hat symbolism to hollow heroics. Hanks' hyperbole mirrors liberal disbelief at Trump's rise, a fusion of media spectacle, disinformation, and anti-establishment rage that defied political logic. The quote critiques systemic failures, a polarized electorate drawn to Trump's demagoguery, partisan media amplifying conspiracy theories, and institutional erosion that normalized his norm-shattering behavior. By equating Trump's presidency to a surreal collision of sci-fi and prehistoric chaos, Hanks highlights the era's destabilizing absurdity, where facts blurred with fiction and democratic safeguards faltered. The imagery of dinosaurs and spaceships also underscores Trumpism's paradoxical identity, simultaneously backward-looking, embracing obsolete policies and radically disruptive, appending governance. Ultimately, Hanks' sarcasm serves as a warning. When spectacle overshadows substance, democracies risk empowering figures who thrive on division, nostalgia, and authoritarianism. The quote crystallizes anxieties about Trump's legacy, a caution that political improbability becomes reality when institutions and voters prioritize outrage over reason. Building on his critique of the surreal political climate that enabled Donald Trump's rise, Tom Hanks deepens his condemnation by addressing the tangible erosion of democratic norms and constitutional principles under Trump's presidency. Where absurdist metaphors once highlighted the improbability and chaos of Trump's ascent, Hanks shifts focus to the concrete consequences of his governance. The weaponization of fear, attacks on judicial and press independence, and the deliberate undermining of electoral integrity. This progression from symbolic critique to institutional analysis underscores Hanks' central concern, that Trump's rejection of ethical stewardship and institutional reverence threatened not just political decorum, but the foundational ideals of unity, accountability, and inclusivity that past leaders across party lines sought to uphold. The contrast between Trump's divisive tactics and the dignified legacy of predecessors like Obama and Bush amplifies Hanks' warning. When leadership prioritizes spectacle over substance, it risks transforming democratic governance into a hollow performance, endangering the very liberties it swore to protect.
And I think with the administration the way it's been, I think I'm not sure the man has took his oath seriously to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
Tom Hanks' statement criticizes Donald Trump's presidency as a breach of the ethical and constitutional responsibilities central to the office. Hanks frames this within broader concerns about Trump's erosion of democratic norms, contrasting his leadership with the institutional respect Hanks observed in past administrations, e.g., Obama's historic inauguration, George W. Bush's personal decorum. The critique centers on Trump's actions that prioritized divisiveness over unity and personal or political interests over national welfare. Key examples include Trump's attempts to delegitimize the 2020 election, propagating baseless fraud claims and inciting the January 6 Capitol riot, which directly undermined the oath to preserve democracy. Similarly, Trump's attacks on judicial independence, mocking judges who opposed his policies, and the free press, enemies of the people, weakened constitutional checks vital to accountability. Hanks also condemns Trump's exploitation of fear and xenophobia as political tools, citing policies like the Muslim travel ban and rhetoric stoking racial tensions, e.g., defending neo-Nazis as very fine people. These tactics, Hanks implies, commodified outrage and division, prioritizing partisan loyalty over the constitutional mandate to promote the general welfare. For Hanks, Trump's presidency represented a departure from the selflessness and institutional reverence he associates with leaders like Obama, whose election symbolized progress akin to landing on the moon, or Bush, whose personal interactions reflected respect for the office's dignity. Trump's norm-shattering behavior, refusing transparency, withholding tax returns, mocking opponents, and undermining trust in elections, signaled a rejection of the stewardship expected of commanders-in-chief. Ultimately, Hanks' critique reflects a fear that Trump's tenure normalized authoritarianism, eroded democratic safeguards, and prioritized spectacle over governance. By framing the 2020 election as a reckoning, Hanks positions Biden as a corrective to restore integrity to the oath, a return to leadership valuing unity, accountability, and constitutional fidelity. His words underscore a civic ideal of the presidency as a guardian of shared democratic values, a role he believes Trump neglected, endangering America's identity as a promised land of liberty and inclusivity. Tom Hanks' critique of leadership failures extends beyond institutional decay to confront the moral corrosion embedded in personal conduct, revealing how disrespect for democratic norms intertwines with the degradation of societal values. While his earlier arguments spotlighted the systemic dismantling of constitutional safeguards and the exploitation of fear for political gain, he now scrutinizes the toxic normalization of misogyny and its implications for public trust. By challenging Trump's dismissal of predatory remarks as trivial locker room talk, Hanks exposes a broader pattern where power is wielded to excuse indignity, eroding both ethical governance and gender equality. This pivot from structural critique to moral accountability underscores a unified theme. Leadership that trivializes human dignity and institutional integrity not endangers democracy's framework, but also poisons the cultural bedrock upon which it stands.
Oh dear, oh no, that's not, he was at work, man. He wasn't in the locker room, he was at work. He was showing up to do a thing on camera. That's look, a lot of people, look, I'm offended as a man. I'm not offended as a husband or a father, I'm offended as a guy.
This critique of Donald Trump's asterisk access Hollywood asterisk remarks, in which he bragged about sexually assaulting women, centers on the dangerous normalization of misogyny and the erosion of ethical standards in leadership. By rejecting Trump's dismissal of the comments as inconsequential locker room banter, Tom Hanks underscores that such behavior occurred in a professional context, at work, on camera, where power dynamics and workplace decorum demand accountability. Trump's attempt to downplay his actions as harmless male bravado is reframed as a systemic issue. It reflects patriarchal entitlement that treats women's bodies as objects of conquest, a mindset incompatible with the respect demanded in any professional or public setting. The speaker's declaration of being offended as a man, rather than solely as a husband or father, broadens the critique beyond personal morality to a collective male responsibility to challenge toxic masculinity. This aligns with #Me Too era demands for accountability, where silence or deflection perpetuates a culture enabling harassment and abuse. The condemnation also targets Trump's moral unfitness for the presidency. His remarks, and his refusal to meaningfully apologize, exemplified a leadership style that prioritized arrogance over integrity, normalizing disrespect toward women as a trivial distraction. This contrasts sharply with the dignity historically associated with the office, where presidents are expected to model ethical behavior. The critique implicitly contrasts Trump with leaders who uphold institutional respect, such as Barack Obama, whose election symbolized progress toward inclusivity, or George W. Bush, whose personal interactions, as recounted in the file, reflected a baseline decorum. Trump's behavior, by contrast, reduced governance to a spectacle, where degrading rhetoric and moral laxity were excused as political entertainment. The workplace framing is pivotal. By emphasizing Trump was at work, the critique rejects the notion that misogyny is permissible in male-dominated spaces. It argues that such environments, whether locker rooms, film sets, or political campaigns, are not ethical vacuums but arenas where power imbalances must be checked. Trump's remarks, made while preparing for a media appearance, highlight the hypocrisy of a leader who leveraged his public platform to demean women while demanding professional deference. This duality underscores a broader societal hypocrisy: the expectation that women navigate workplaces plagued by harassment, while men in power face no consequences for perpetuating it. The analogy of choosing a qualified dentist over an amateur, someone who's done 6,000 root canals, extends the critique to electoral responsibility. It rebukes voters who prioritized partisan loyalty over moral and professional competence, enabling a candidate whose behavior and rhetoric degraded public discourse. The election, framed as a reckoning, becomes a choice between restoring ethical governance or accepting a circus of division. The speaker's outrage thus transcends Trump personally, targeting a political culture that rewards performative aggression and dismisses accountability as political correctness. Ultimately, This critique positions Trump's remarks as symptomatic of a deeper societal rot, one where sexism is trivialized, leadership is divorced from morality, and democracy is jeopardized by voters' tolerance for indignity. By refusing to compartmentalize misogyny as a private flaw, the speaker insists that leadership demands respect for all individuals, regardless of gender. The election becomes not just a political decision, but a moral test of whether society will condone the erosion of dignity in pursuit of power.
I think there's always reason to be worried about the short term, but I look at the longer term of what happened.
Tom Hanks' reflection on democracy and leadership captures his cautious yet resolute faith in America's democratic resilience, even as he acknowledges the destabilizing potential of another Trump presidency. Speaking at the 80th anniversary of D-Day, Hanks anchors his optimism in the historical legacy of collective sacrifice, drawing a stark contrast between the selfless unity of the WW2 generation and the fragmented, ego-driven politics of today. His reference to the Allied soldiers who stormed Normandy, young men who left behind the comforts of a safe America to mend the future, serves as both a tribute and a cautionary tale. These veterans, he emphasizes, acted not for personal gain or territorial conquest, but out of a moral imperative to defend liberty, embodying the great communal effort that defines democracy's highest ideals. Hanks juxtaposes this ethos with the modern political climate, where divisive rhetoric, authoritarian impulses, and transactional leadership threaten to erode the very values those soldiers died to protect. The crux of Hanks' argument lies in his distinction between short-term anxieties and long-term progress. While he acknowledges legitimate fears about Trump's potential return, a leader he views as prioritizing personal ambition over constitutional duty, he refuses to succumb to fatalism. Instead, he invokes the Constitution's aspirational framework, which envisions a more perfect union as an iterative, collective project. This vision, Hanks argues, is sustained not by flawless leaders, but by ordinary citizens committed to incremental, everyday acts of justice. His faith mirrors the perseverance of the WW2 generation. Soldiers in the 38th Shoe Repair Battalion, or typists, well behind the lines, who contributed to the war effort through unglamorous yet essential tasks. For Hanks, democracy's survival hinges on this same ethos: small, steadfast deeds that cumulatively uphold truth and accountability, even amid setbacks. Hanks' perspective is deeply informed by his dual identity as a storyteller and lay historian. His work on Saving Private Ryan, which sought to capture the verisimilitude of war, underscores his reverence for historical truth as a bulwark against authoritarian revisionism. The film's visceral portrayal of Omaha Beach, its chaos, fear, and unvarnished humanity, serves as a metaphor for democracy's fragility and necessity. Hanks warns that leaders who distort facts stoke division or glorify self-interest, as he implies Trump does, risk severing society from the shared reality that binds it. Yet, his optimism persists because he trusts in the slow melding of the truth into public consciousness, a process he likens to the painstaking repair of busted weapons by WW2 mechanics, a laborious but vital act of preservation. Central to Hanks' critique is the danger of complacency. He recalls the pre-WW2 era, when isolationist movements like America First and Nazi sympathizers in Madison Square Garden downplayed global threats, only for Pearl Harbor to shatter such illusions. Similarly, he suggests that contemporary dismissals of authoritarianism, e.g., Putin's invasion of Ukraine or Trump's flirtations with autocratic rhetoric, risk repeating history's mistakes. However, Hanks' faith in the American people, their capacity to wise up and rally toward justice, as they did after 1941, tempers his warnings with hope. He positions democracy not as a static achievement, but as a perpetual struggle, requiring vigilance against those who would replace communal purpose with corrosive individualism. Ultimately, Hanks' statement is a call to action disguised as reassurance. By framing the D-Day anniversary as a reminder of what happens when you don't do it right over a long course, he urges citizens to confront short-term threats with the same clarity and courage as the WW2 generation. His invocation of the cloak of democracy symbolizes its dual nature, both fragile and enduring, requiring protection yet capable of inspiring universal allegiance. While another Trump presidency might test this fabric, Hanks' faith lies in the broader arc of history, a belief that the collective will to do the right thing, however imperfectly pursued, will ultimately prevail. In this light, his words are less a dismissal of present dangers than a challenge to honor the past by recommitting to democracy's unfinished work.
Our Constitution says, we the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union. That journey to a more perfect union has missteps in it.
Tom Hanks' assertion crystallizes his view of American democracy as an imperfect yet enduring project, shaped by collective struggle and incremental progress. This sentence, steeped in historical awareness and civic idealism, underscores Hanks' belief that democracy's strength lies not in flawlessness, but in its capacity for self-correction. By invoking the Constitution's preamble to form a more perfect union, Hanks emphasizes the aspirational nature of democracy, framing it as a journey rather than a destination. The acknowledgement of missteps reflects his unflinching realism about America's failures, slavery, segregation, political corruption, or modern authoritarian threats, while rejecting cynicism. For Hanks, these missteps are not terminal but pedagogical, offering lessons that inform the slow melding of the truth into societal progress. This perspective is deeply informed by Hanks' reverence for history, particularly the WW2 generation's sacrifices. He contrasts the Constitution's aspirational language with the visceral realities of D-Day, where soldiers acted not for personal glory, but to mend the future. The more perfect union ideal, he implies, demands similar selflessness, a communal effort to prioritize justice over division, truth over lies, and collective welfare over individual gain. His reference to the 38th Shoe Repair Battalion and typists behind the lines illustrates that progress hinges not only on grand gestures but on mundane, often overlooked contributions. This democratization of responsibility, where every citizen, like those WW2 support troops, plays a role in upholding liberty, serves as a rebuke to leaders like Trump, whose transactional politics and cult of personality prioritize self-interest over communal purpose. Hanks' focus on the Constitution's journey also critiques modern political polarization. By framing democracy as a work in progress, he challenges the notion that partisan victories or defeats are existential endpoints. Instead, he positions Trump's presidency and potential return as a misstep within a broader arc, testing but not derailing the nation's capacity for renewal. This reflects his faith in institutions and civic engagement. Just as WW2 soldiers woke up every morning asking how to further up this cause of liberation, Hanks urges citizens to recommit to democratic principles through everyday acts, voting, dialogue, and holding leaders accountable. The sentence also subtly rebukes authoritarianism, both abroad, e.g., Putin's invasion of Ukraine, and at home. By highlighting the Constitution's call for a union more perfect than its past, Hanks rejects the nostalgic demagoguery of "Make America Great Again," which frames progress as a return to an idealized and exclusionary past. Instead, he champions forward-looking solidarity, where progress is measured by inclusion and equity. His invocation of the Constitution's aspirational language mirrors the D-Day veterans' forward-thinking courage. They fought not to restore a pre-war status quo, but to forge a freer world. Similarly, Hanks implies that defending democracy today requires confronting modern autocrats and their enablers, not retreating into isolationism or denial. Ultimately, this sentence encapsulates Hanks' guarded optimism. While he acknowledges democracy's fragility, citing pre-WW2 isolationism or contemporary threats, he trusts in the resilience of we the people. His faith rests not in leaders but in the cumulative power of ordinary citizens to do the right thing, whether repairing Jeeps in a war zone or challenging misinformation in a digital age. By framing the Constitution as a living document, Hanks offers a counter-narrative to Trump-era nihilism. Democracy's missteps are not failures but proof of its adaptability, demanding vigilance, humility, and an unshakable belief that the arc of history bends toward justice, even when progress feels slightly out of our grasp. Tom Hanks' layered critique of Donald Trump, a blend of absurdist satire, moral outrage, and steadfast faith in democracy, leaves us with a pressing question. What resonates most after this clash of ideals? Was it Hanks' vivid imagery of spaceships and dinosaurs, casting Trump's rise as a surreal rupture of reason? The stark erosion of constitutional norms, a betrayal of the oath he swore to uphold? Or his D-Day tribute, a call to reclaim the selfless courage that once mended the future? We want to hear from you. Did Hanks' blend of historical reverence and sharp rebuke ignite your hope, or did his warnings about democracy's fragility hit closer to home? Maybe you've watched other leaders shift from spectacle to menace in your own time. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We're ready to unpack this with you. And please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and tap the bell to stay in the loop for more deep dives into the stories shaping our era. Your engagement powers this mission to spotlight truth, question authority, and elevate voices like Hank's. Thanks for joining us. See you in the next one.